You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Hi everybody and welcome to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me your host, Katie Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. Now before we get into anything else, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who has been rating and reviewing, like on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like I know on Apple Podcasts, if you write something in the review, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter at all. Like the content itself is irrelevant, but like just by writing something, it like pushes you up the algorithm somehow. I don't know. It's Apple Podcasts magic. But if anyone would like to rate and review 5 stars, that would be totes amazing. Can't believe I just used the phrase totes amazing, but we're just gonna let it slide, I think. Yeah? Cool. But like you can say anything. You can say your favourite figure from history. You can tell me your favourite colour. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's so good. But yeah, I've been putting stuff together anyway, sidebar, for October, because I'm trying to get like spooky stuff sorted. And my first live show in Dublin is going to be next month. I'm just getting the details all sorted out for it. And my mouth is so sore right now. I've just jumped 3 conversations in less than a minute. But yeah, my jaw is really sore because I was reading a bedtime story. And we're actually reading Roald Dahl right now, Danny, Champion of the World. And before this, I was reading David Walliams, Codename Bananas. And I keep doing it to myself. I keep giving characters that talk a lot really straining voices. Because like Uncle Sid in Codename Bananas, I made him talk like this, like really, really gruff. Because he's meant to be like a Cockney. And I was like, my dad, when he used to smoke too much. Oh, what? And then I was like, okay, I'll make something different, because usually I would do a Gruffalo voice, and the Gruffalo is always really Scottish, which is basically the same as the English voice I just did, but Scottish. Like, it's all from the same part. And I was like, I'll do something different this time for Danny, Champion of the World, and I'm doing Danny's dad voice. And I'm not doing an impression of a Yorkshire person. No. I am doing an impression of Michael Palin from Monty Python as a Yorkshire person. Hey up, Chuck. There's trouble up mill. Oh, I wasn't expecting the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. But it's the Michael Palin, like, what's wrong with her? She's got huge tracts of land. But like, it's really awkward to hold my mouth in that position, especially when I have to do like pages of speech. And I'm like, oh no. And I was like doing this voice, and then suddenly it became Welsh. Like, what's happening here? And then it's kind of scousy. Like, the accent just was not flowing, and the kids were like, why is their voice changing? I'm like, sorry. But my jaw is so sore. But I shall power through, because I care about you and I want you to know this story. So because I was reading Roald Dahl, I was like, I'm going to cover Roald Dahl, because from October I want to cover lots of sort of like spooky and creepy, macabre even. I want to like keep in that sort of vein. I just want to do like spooky stuff for October, because why the fuck not? Let's have a theme, because I can. And then some people want some reduxes of old stuff I did that has absolutely shocking audio, by the way. But I am going to do that. It's going to be fine. I will make it work. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, quit your jabber jabber. In fact me. In fact you, I will. But first, we've got to get our source on. Our sources are Meet Roald Dahl by Francis E. Ruffin, Roald Dahl, the Champion Storyteller by Andrea Shavik, The Irregulars, Roald Dahl and the British Spy Ring in Wartime Washington by Jeanette Conant, Boy, Tales of Childhood by Roald Dahl, Roald Dahl, a Biography by Jeremy Triglone, Storyteller, the authorised biography of Roald Dahl by Donald Sturrock. And of course we have our favourites, biography.com and history.com. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then let's begin. Roald Dahl was born on the 13th of September 1916 in Llandalf in Cardiff, in the country of Wales. I almost said County Wales, because I live in Ireland and my habit is to just be like, County Donegal, County Fermanagh. No, Wales, the country. The country. So he is the child of two Norwegian immigrants. Now his father, Roald Dahl, he was a self-made man and quite wealthy shipbroker. So he had emigrated from Norway and moved to Wales with his first wife, Marie Boran-Gresset, and they have two children together, Hélène Marguerite and Louis. Now Marie passes away in 1907, I'm not sure from what, but she does. So his dad is widowed with two children and surprisingly enough doesn't actually get married for another 4 years. Like he doesn't get remarried. And this is a time where blended families were very much a thing, and him being, well, a wealthy man, a man of prospect, remarrying would have been like very much the thing to do. But he waited to do so, and he ended up marrying Sophie Magdalene, who was a daughter of just a lot of rich Norwegian people, effectively. And so they get married in 1911. She emigrates to the UK, and they go on to have 5 children together. Astrid, Alfhild, Asta, Elsa, and Roald. Nope, that's my mistake. Hélène Marguerite is also known as Elsa, so that's one person. So yeah, he has 4 sisters and 1 brother. Yeah, okay. Nope, correction. I've corrected myself. It's all good. Any other half siblings? Fuck off. No, right? They're just siblings. You don't have to make this weird divide by being like, oh, they're half this and half that. No. It doesn't matter, right? They're still siblings. Get over it, okay? Okay. So Roald Dahl, he's bilingual. He speaks Norwegian growing up, speaks it with his siblings, and he speaks it all through his life. So he's got Norwegian and English. Did he ever learn Welsh? I don't fucking know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure he did. I mean, he probably could have picked it up fairly easily because he was already bilingual. And generally when you have more than one language, it's easier to pick up more. Just because of your brain does a thing. Oh, that was really intelligent, really, really insightful there. Your brain does a thing. Yes, it's like pattern recognition or something like that. There is a term for it, I just don't know what it is. But Dahl and his siblings, they're all raised in like the Norwegian Lutheran Church, and they're all like baptised at the Norwegian Church in Cardiff. I don't know how many Norwegians ended up in Cardiff that there was a Norwegian church. Like, how many people do need to emigrate from like a country before like a church gets established? Because like there must be a lot, right? There's got to be. There has to be. So Dahl's childhood is just fucking marred with tragedy, like throughout. So in 1920, when Dahl was just 3 years old, his sister Astrid dies from appendicitis, and she's only 7. And then a few weeks later, again, he's only 3. A few weeks later, Roald Dahl dies of pneumonia. He's 57 years old, and he's gone. He's kaput. Which must have been a really fucking stressful time for his mum, because she's pregnant at this point with the youngest sister, Asta. So she loses a child, she loses her husband, she's got all these kids to deal with, and then she gives birth to her youngest child who's never going to know her father. And Roald's so young, it's unlikely that he'll have any memories of him, because 3 is a really young age. It's massive, developmentally, but memory, bit thin there, wee bit thin. So when Harold passes away, he leaves an estate of, what was it, £158,917 and 10 shillings, which in today's money is about £7 million. It was a fair chunk, pretty decent. Now, Sophie Magdalene Dahl, she decides that she's going to stay in the UK. She's not going to bugger off back to Norway, because Harold, he always wanted his kids to have a UK education, because at the time it was one of the better educations available in the world. And so the Dahls stay in the UK. But it's not all tragedy for Dahl. When he's 6 years old, he gets to meet the Beatrix Potter. He adored Beatrix Potter, and that's the author of Peter Rabbit. And I think she actually ended up writing Peter Rabbit because she wanted to paint fields and shit. I think what it was, if I'm not mistaken, she was sent to the countryside for her health, because Victorians, they were sending you to the countryside or the seaside for your maladies. And so she would paint these little watercolours of field mice and rabbits and things, and that's how the concept of the little cheeky, little mischievous Peter Rabbit was created. And I think, was Peter Rabbit the first licensed character? Someone tweet me and DM me, let me know the information. One of you will know. So Dahl was educated in the UK. He went to the cathedral school in Clondarf, and things didn't go well for him there. I mean, academically fine, but he really wasn't keen on corporal punishment, which, in the 1920s was just how they did things. I'm not saying it's right. I think it's fucking awful, but it's just what they did. So he gets caned in 1924 for what he calls the Great Mouse Plot of 1924. Him and 4 of his friends. Because they get a dead mouse and they put it in a jar of gobstoppers in Mrs. Pratchett's sweet shop. Now, I'm not condoning putting rodent cadavers into anybody's candy jars. However, in 1924, it does seem like the height of excitement a bunch of 8-year-olds can get up to. If you ever read old boarding school and private school books, St. Clair's, Malloy Towers by Enid Blyton, and things like that, pranks are very much just a way of being, and they're usually kind of silly and funny, and there's not a lot of malice behind it. Whereas a lot of modern pranks, there's just it's kind of malevolent, it's kind of cruel. Whereas these ones are just kind of less cruel, I think, because of the era in which they exist. But yeah, I'm fairly certain this school was Dahl's inspiration for the school in Matilda. But anyway, he goes from one private school to another private school. Now, they're called public schools. I don't know why specifically. There's probably a reason for that. Again, DM me or tweet at me. It's fine. But he ends up being transferred to St. Peter's in Weston-super-Mare. And so he has to go by ferry, which is just across the Bristol Channel So it's like really close. Like the distance between like Bristol and Cardiff is pretty close. Because if you're flying into Wales, it's actually usually easier to just fly into Bristol and like, get the bus over. But yeah, at this point he would have used the ferry, and he was in this boarding school, and he absolutely hated it. He despised this place, and he would write letters home to his mum, right? But like he wouldn't let her know that he absolutely detested this school, and he only found out like after she passes away that she kept like every single one of their letters. That's like my mum. My mum keeps like every single card I have ever gotten her. Like every single one. There's boxes of them. Which has rubbed off on me a wee bit. I love cards. Like I got this amazing... Sidebar, I got this amazing card from like Salem. It was actually somebody's first ever piece of fan mail they've written anybody. And I loved it. I think it was one of, if not the first piece of fan mail I ever received. And it was this card from Salem. And it had this like, just wonderful, beautiful handwriting, by the way. Wonderful cursive all the way through it. And it was amazing. I love it. And it's going up in Pride and Place when I actually eventually build my pod loft and start doing things there, instead of haphazardly recording things in a bedroom with a broken window. So if you hear the wind in the background, I'm sorry. It's very stormy, and I've padded it up the best I can. The duct tape ain't doing the job these days. But anyway, when Dahl was 13, he ends up going to Repton School in Derbyshire. And it is just as bad as you can expect a secondary school for rich people to be. Because there's like hazing and just all that kind of nonsense. And it's very much like hierarchical, and there's corporal punishment. And Dahl, again, absolutely detests this kind of thing. And he completely hates the mistreatment. And again, this sort of serves for inspiration for a few things later on. But like, he just can't stand corporal punishment. Now, academically, he's okay. Like, things are fine. Like, he's not standing out in any capacity. And like, even his teachers are like mad at the fact that when he writes things down, they don't quite make sense because the words he's using don't align with what he's trying to say. But I think that's just his mind a wee bit. But while he's there anyway, he just starts growing to the point where he actually gets to 6 foot 6 inches. He's 6.5 feet tall. That is, I know of someone who is 6'7", and every time I'm walking beside him, I'm like a chihuahua walking next to a horse. Like, my wee legs are trying to keep up. So Dahl is massive. Maybe that's why he kept trying to make huge things in his book. Like, let me tell you about this peach. What about it? It's fucking huge. So he's just so tall. And so, generally, quite good for the old sports to have a massive fella there. So he's playing like squash and golf and football and cricket. And he's just kind of delving into everything. I'm not surprised cricket was involved because, you know, rich white people in cricket just seems to be a thing. I mean, I know like India plays cricket, but that's just because they were colonised, so. But they do keep beating England at it, which is really, really funny. You know that game you forced us to play? Yeah, well now we're kicking your ass at it, so you're welcome. So while he's at this school in Repton, he ends up being sent chocolate to test. So like Cadbury's would send chocolate to this school full of rich boys. Not to like, you know, schools with people who aren't rich, maybe. Would be nice to get them to taste the chocolate. No? Okay. But again, being like sent lots of chocolate seems to me, you know, in an era where it wasn't so available, seems like a little bit of inspiration. I'm just saying. So he would spend all of the academic year at school, and then his summers he would spend in Norway with his mother's family. Don't know much about his father's side, if there was any connection there, but definitely with his mum's side. And he's like really, really close to his mum. Like, I mean, it'd be hard not to, considering, you know, like the sudden loss of his father and the loss of his sister, it would have made his mum more connected to him. You know, he probably reminded her of his dad, you know? So in 1934, he finishes school and he joins the Public Schools Exploring Society. And he ends up going to Nova Scotia and hiking through Newfoundland and Canada, like with his group. And after he does that, he gets a job with the Shell Petroleum Company. So he gets trained in the UK and then heads over to Mombasa in Kenya. And then he ends up in Dar es Salaam, which is basically this British colony in Tanzania. So there's him and then two other English fellas who are working in Dar es Salaam, and they're living just outside it in this house owned by Shell, right? And they've got a cook and personal servants. Like, they have servants. Like, cool. This is fun. And so he's working there for the next 5 years. At which, the Second World War, you know, is coming up on the horizon. And there's a fuck ton of German people living in Dar es Salaam. So Roald Dahl gets commissioned as a lieutenant into the King's African Rifles. So within the King's African Rifles, there are like indigenous people, like part of that, the Askari, I think it is. And Dahl ends up with a platoon of Askari. They're all part of this colonial army, and it's up to them to sort of round up all of these German people in Dar es Salaam. I think one of the reasons he ended up with this gig specifically is because he learned Swahili while he was in Africa. But yeah, he's with this East African regiment for like a couple of months, and then in November that year, he decides he's going to join the RAF. And he drives, was it 600 miles? Was it 970 kilometers? Math. So yeah, he drives from Dar es Salaam to Nairobi. And so he gets accepted for flight training, becomes an aircraftman. What? Why did I say it like that? I don't know. An aircraftman. And he ends up flying effectively obsolete gladiators. The Gloucester gladiators, they're not the most tip top of, you know, aircraft, but that's what he gets to. And so he didn't really get any like special training in like aerial combat. Like, he had flight hours and stuff. Like, he had flown over sort of like Iraq and Kenya and all this kind of stuff. Like, he trained on, what was it, Hawker Hearts? I want to say Hawker Hearts because I'm not too up on aircraft or machinery that was used in wars, because I find them quite boring. And I just, you want to tell me about the Panzerkampfwagen? You want to tell me about the Panzerkampfwagen? I don't give a fuck about the Panzerkampfwagen, my friend. Unless we're talking about the manual featuring Elvira. That is what we're talking about. I don't care about tanks. They mean nothing to me. Your machines mean nothing. I don't even know types of cars. Like, what kind of car is it? I'm like, I don't know. Blue? Like, gets me from A to B, mate. Is it high off the ground, low off the ground? Like, I'm like, it's an estate, and it's like not an estate, it's a people carrier. I don't know the difference. They both carry people. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, when he finally gets to number 80 Squadron, he's flying fucking biplanes, right? He's doesn't really get any like specialist aerial combat training and also they're fucking biplanes. So he's flying to an airstrip, what was it? Just south of Mersamatra. And he couldn't find the airstrip. He couldn't find it. And it's dark. You know, he's running out of fuel. And he's trying to, you know, land it. And that doesn't quite work in his favour. Because instead of landing it, he crashes it. He hits a bloody boulder. As it turns out, Dahl had been given the wrong coordinates. They sent him to the wrong place. So instead of going to the airstrip, they sent him to no man's land between like Italian and Allied forces. Like, he's lucky that he ended up where he ended up. But yeah, he crashes this bloody biplane and he ends up with a crushed skull, a broken nose, and he's temporarily blinded. And he crawls out of the burning wreckage of this tinfoil plane. And then darkness. I mean, it's already darkness because he's blind, but he just unconscious. He ended up in a coma. Luckily for him, he was rescued and he gets brought to this first aid post in Mersamatra. And so, like, he finally comes to, but he still can't see shit. And they're like, this is worse than we expected. And he gets sent to the Royal Navy Hospital in Alexandria. So he gets sent there by train. And there's every possibility that he got, like, plastic surgery there because of his nose. It's a very maybe thing. Because it's a very polished nose. And I don't know if that was the work of a plastic surgeon like he claims it was, but Roald Dahl is a storyteller. He's known for telling tall tales. So like he said that he was shot down over Libya. He was not. He crash landed. Like, mate, no. So this entire crash, it actually causes like so many issues throughout his life. Like he needs 2 spinal surgeries. He needs both of his hips replaced. I think one happens earlier and the other one happens like later on in his life. But he ends up with 2 like steel hips eventually. But yeah, he's at this Royal Navy hospital and he is just infatuated with Mary Welland, who's this nurse. And he's falling in love with her and out of love with her and like, well, they won't, spoiler alert, they won't. But anyway, luckily for Dahl, by 1941, February, nice and early, he is just discharged from hospital and is A-OK. And by A-OK, I mean, they say, you can get in a plane again, boy. So he is given the all clear. You are good to go. Get in that plane, buddy. So he's cleared. He's cleared for flying. And so he does. So the 80 Squadron, the one that he was part of, they were no longer by Mersamatra. They were part of the Greek campaign. So they're close to Athens, I think. So instead of, you know, the biplanes, they're in Hawker Hurricanes. Because so many of these have alliteration. Hawker Hurricanes, Gloucester Gladiators, so on and so forth. But yeah, Dahl ends up flying to Greece because like they don't have enough like combat planes. I think they've got less than 20, right? They've not many at all. So he's flying planes out. So that's what he's doing. So he flies in his wee plane. So Dahl, he ends up, well, getting rid of a few Axis bombers. He's doing his thing. And then later on in the year, he takes part in the Battle of Athens. And this is just chaos. It's pure chaos. I think 22 German bombers like go down. But there's only like 12 hurricanes and they lose 5 of them. 1 pilot survives, the other 4 just, they're gone. But like because of this chaos, like they don't actually know if they've shot down one of their own or one of like the enemy. It's just planes are just going past each other and they're just hoping for the best, right? They're just hoping they recognise the right one. And I think this is one of the last, if not the last battle that Dahl is in, because he starts getting headaches. Headaches that are so severe that he is blacking out. Clearly, that initial crash did something dodgy to his head. Now, there's a theory that like it affected the frontal lobe, which is the one which is for decision making, you know, the rational part of your brain. Now, I feel like having a severe head injury and then going up to an area where there was massive pressure up in the sky, you know, when you're like moving really fast and it's doing like discombobulating things to your body, probably not conducive to like healthy brain shit, you know? Yeah. So Dahl is uncleared for duty and ends up being sent home to the UK. Back in England, he is posted to an RAF training camp in Uxbridge. Now he is trying to get to a level of health that he can be an instructor. Effectively, no blacking out, you know. Generally, a good way to be. But he ends up meeting the Under Secretary of State for Air, Major Harold Balfour. Because, you know, he's at one of his fancy man's clubs. And Harold Balfour, he likes Dahl. He thinks he's clever, he's good at chatting, and he's got a fairly decent war record. And so he thinks, this is just the ticket. And he appoints him as the assistant air attaché at the British Embassy in Washington. And Dahl is like, I don't want to do that. I want to train people to fly planes to fight this war. And yeah. It takes a wee bit of convincing, but he ends up going. So he ends up heading to Glasgow and then travelling over to Halifax in Canada. Just basically going on a ship across the Atlantic Ocean. And then he gets there and gets on a sleeper train to Montreal. Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
So when Dahl leaves the UK, it's rationing. So people would have a ration book and you would have an amount of stamps in it where you could get like the food that you were allocated. Right? So everything was rationed out. Which is why, I might add, that the reason that wee fella sold his entire family out in The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe for a Turkish delight, which people are just like, they're not that good. Wartime rationing. They were making people eat carrots as a treat. Carrot on a stick. Food propaganda. And this is sugar to a child who has been starving, you know? Fucking yes, he's going to sell everybody out for some Turkish delight. Could you imagine if they gave him a biscuit? He would have been, yep, there you go, bye-bye. So in the UK, there's food rationing, you know, people are eating relatively plainly. Even the elites, it's relatively plain in comparison to what they're used to. And so he gets to America, and there's food. There's an abundance of food. And delicious, interesting, high-class food. And Dahl gets to Washington, D.C., and he is not happy. He ends up sharing a house in Georgetown, and he's there for 10 days, and he is mad. He's telling people that, he's got the worst job, it's so unimportant. And, because he's just come from war. He was doing this, he was battling, he was doing important stuff. And, just living horror. Because his life, as if he doesn't have enough of it. Not think you've had enough horror in your life, Roald? No. Alright then. And he's sharing this house with another attaché, right? And the two of them, I don't know if they get on, but I'm thinking heads were butted. Because, Dahl has arrived, not long after Pearl Harbor. There's, a couple of months, I think, in between. It's not a huge amount. And he gets there, and it's just, how to put this, it's a different form of chaos. Because he's now sort of around all of these, higher society people in the States. He's going to cocktail parties and meetings, and he ends up integrating himself with society, right? Or, high society. And Dahl ends up hobnobbing just the right people, and he gets recruited by British intelligence. And a bunch of other sort of entertainers, they're all part of this, but they're nicknamed the Baker Street Irregulars after the Irregulars, the sort of little spy network in Sherlock Holmes. So effectively, they were already in the States, a lot of them. The whole purpose was to kind of gently nudge the US to join the war. It was less of an effort after Pearl Harbor, but they were still there. And they wanted to create British propaganda, or at least war propaganda. And so, was it C.S. Forrester ends up recruiting Dahl to write for the Sunday Post about, his crash and his time in the Air Force. And so this is where he starts saying that he was shot down over Libya. Because he's trying to garner sympathy and, all this stuff for the war effort. So, he becomes a spy. This is madness. Because, they're spies. But not the kind of spies that, stabby. No. They're the kind of spies that are there to make friends. To charm and influence. And, shag. The spy who shagged me? That's the spy who shagged me. Not me specifically. I mean, I'm fairly certain. Am I fairly certain I've never shagged a spy? They would have some pretty shitty covers if they did. Really. Yeah. No. So, the irregulars, other irregulars consist of Ian Fleming, yes, the dude who wrote James Bond. Noel Coward, Leslie Howard, Ashley from Gone with the Wind, and Sir William Stevenson, who was the actual inspiration for James Bond. So yeah, they're all together. So the main mission was to charm and influence and befriend all of these influential and important people in the US. And, convince them to invest, support and or join the war effort. Now, if that didn't work, if that didn't quite pan out for them, they were to garner enough sort of evidence to blackmail them into it, effectively. They were like, we're going to either, like, carrot or stick you. Fucking carrot's back again. Oh, the carrot of war. So, yeah. This is where Roald Dahl's penis comes into it. I don't know how else to, like, bring this up. He did it often enough. Now, Dahl was known as a ladies' man anyway, right? And he ends up being the toy boy for Claire Booth-Luce. So Claire Booth-Luce, she is a Republican congresswoman and, more importantly, surprisingly, the wife of the owner of Time, Life and Fortune magazines. So yeah, she's married to Henry Luce. He's like this anti-British isolationist, really. And yeah, I mean, considering he didn't want to be involved in this and that he didn't like Britain and would probably be against that, I guess boinking his wife was a very incredibly super important spy mission. However, my favourite part of this story is, like, this lasts a couple days. Like, Dahl is with Claire Booth-Luce for a couple of days. And Dahl cannot handle her libido. Like, he just can't. He ends up calling his superiors. He phones them up and he is begging to abort the mission. He wants to, like, get out of the project. He wants out of it. He wants to just... He's like, fuck this for a game of soldiers. He wants out of her and out of this whole plan. Like, actual quote from him. I'm going to try and give him a posh English voice. I'm going to do my best here. Okay. Roald Dahl. I am all fucked out. That goddamn woman has absolutely screwed me from one end of the room to the other for 3 goddamn nights. Now, this may shock you, gentle listener, but Roald Dahl's superiors were like, tough luck. Just lie back. Think of England. You know what I mean? Like, you're literally doing this for your country. The red, white, and the blue. It's England who's asking. Yeah. Any chance to throw a Grease 2 lyric in there, and I mean, I paraphrase, but like, it's a parody, technically. It's fine. So yeah, he has to do it for his country, which is funny considering he's already a literal war hero. But yeah. So I don't know what happened. This man has had surgeries. He's had his face caved in. And, he's seen his friends die. What was this woman doing to him? Like what? So he's doing this work for MI6 as part of the British Security Coordination. And, yeah, he ends up being sent back to Britain by the embassy officials because of, quote-unquote, misconduct. Now, although I feel whatever he did it deliberately. He was just like, my Willy Wonka can't take it anymore, Captain. It doesn't have the power. Yeah, so he ends up being sent back to Britain from the agency. They're just like, no, we can't be dealing with him anymore. So he must have fucked something up royally. You know what I mean? And now I don't know if this was a petty move or not, but like, he gets booted back to England, and then one of the spy masters, he sends him back to Washington, but he promotes him. So he's now a wing commander. So after this, he's got like this temporary wing commander role and ends up with squadron leader with 5 aerial victories. So he's technically a flying ace. But yeah, the war ends and he has some time on his hands. Now he says that, he got like the air crash and it suddenly made him write things, which is one way of putting it. Or now you don't have a full-time occupation distracting you and you have more time to write things. Now, somewhere along the way, ladies' man Roald Dahl meets, courts, and marries Patricia O'Neill, who was an American actress, and they get married in 1953, and they end up having 5 children together. So there's Olivia 20, Chantal Sophia, Theo Matthew, Ophelia Magdalena, and Lucy Neal. So they're married for 7 years, and in 1960, their 4-month-old son Theo was incredibly injured when his baby carriage, his little pram, gets hit by a taxi in New York. So because of this, he suffers from hydrocephalus, which is a build-up of cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. And so Dahl ends up part of a team who designed this valve, right? So it's the Wade-Dahl-Till valve. So it's this sort of shunt which is used to reduce all of this fucking fluid in the brain, right? And so this extra valve just makes all the difference. So it's this weird collaboration between Ormond Street Hospital, there's a neurosurgeon there called Kenneth Till, there's a hydraulic engineer, Stanley Wade, and then writer Roald Dahl. So during this time, Roald Dahl is writing books. He starts telling his kids stories and he's writing books. And he does this. Now, Dahl is a 6'6" man. And his attitudes and his personality, he's quite domineering. Is it because he's part Norwegian? Is it because he went to public school? Is it because he's a rich white dude? Whom's to say? Was it because of the accident? Also, maybe. Or he could just be, a misogynist. Read The Witches, you know what I mean. Anyway, and this is from someone who actually quite enjoys Roald Dahl books. I loved them growing up. My favourite is still George's Marvellous Medicine. Don't care if it's short. Don't care if it's mainly a poem. I love it. Right? Love it. So basically this shunt, or this valve in the shunt is used on 3,000 kids across the world. It's pretty good. Now Dahl, bit of a control freak, likes to be in charge, likes to be in control, and so that's one of the reasons why he's involved in this. Obviously he wants to care for his kid, or at least we hope. He does, yeah. But he's needs this control. He's a domineering figure. I mean, he's also massive, which kind of exacerbates it a wee bit. But he has to lead the charge on this. So, remember when I said earlier that his life was marred by tragedy? Well, I'm not done. So his daughter Olivia, who was born in 1955, she is 7 years old and she dies of measles. Purely preventable disease. That's why we have a vaccine for it. Vaccinate your fucking kids. Don't be cunts. Right? I don't care. So, yes, where am I now? Dahl is fucking distraught because his daughter, his firstborn child, she's dead. And she died at 7, just like his sister. He's going to make that connection, And, I mean, they're not his fault and they're not really connected, but he will make that connection in his brain because that's what we do as humans. We create patterns even when there are none. And so he is just wallowing in despair. But he has to do something because this is not a man who can sit down and do nothing. So he ends up becomes a massive supporter for vaccination and immunization, and he writes measles, a dangerous illness. He does this whole response for measles cases in the UK, all through the 80s, And he is fighting to save lives. Like, just through another medium now. So, it's actually his daughter's death. Like, everything else in his life, everything he's been through, he still had faith. And here is where he loses his... I'm going to try not to get emotional. No, I can't. I'm already emotional. So, he goes to see... just a member of the clergy. I don't know if it's like the Archbishop of Canterbury or some archbishop, and he goes to see him, and he's informed that Olivia will get into heaven, but her beloved pet, her favourite thing in this world, wouldn't join her. And we all know all dogs go to heaven. Imagine telling that to a grieving father, that like, oh yeah, no, yeah, your daughter's going to be in the afterlife, but not with anything that brings her joy. Like that's going to crush you. It's going to crush you. Oh my God, Katie, stop feeling feelings. Ugh, no. Anyway, so he is... Did you think I was done with tragedy? Did you think I was done? Oh no, my friends. 3 years after he loses his daughter, his wife, Patricia, she has a series of cerebral aneurysms. So she has these strokes, while she's pregnant with their 5th and final child, Lucy. And she just suffers these strokes. And Dahl, being the man he is, he takes charge of care and rehabilitation, and he just starts pushing her, and he's really harsh about it. Now, at this time, in this time period, like, we were unaware that, or the general populace was unaware that the best thing you can do for a stroke victim is to sort of push them and try and get them to do things as quickly as possible in order to sort of refire that and get them moving again and do their little like squeezy handball stuff. So I'm trying to think of the stuff my mum did after her stroke, like all the sort of things, the exercises and all the rehab. But he is like really forcing her and pushing her, but he didn't know that that was actually going to help. Now that on its own, doesn't really make you judge his character too much. Like, maybe he had an idea or a theory and thought this was the right way to do it. But then as it turns out, like, after she has the stroke, he starts talking to her like she's a child, like treats her like she's a child. He would make her repeat things in front of people. It would be like really humiliating. Like, if she said something wrong, he would make her redo it in front of everyone. Not just on her own, not in a caring way, but it was quite aggressive and demanding. And he would talk about her, like, not like behind her back or anything, but as if she wasn't there. So he would talk about her as if she wasn't in the room. And again, still thinking, well, it's in the olden days, it's not that bad. Well. 7 years later, Dahl is writing his books. He's doing very well for himself. Patricia, she's back acting. And there's, was it a costume designer? A set designer for a Maxim coffee advert. And Patricia's in it. And this is where Dahl meets Felicity de Brou-Cosland. And she is, like, vaguely related to the Queen Mother, I think. And so they start this 11-year affair. Like, and he thinks they can, like, hide it from everybody. He's out writing in his garden shed. He's doing stuff. He's publishing his books. She's doing, I assume, set designer things. Patricia's acting. All the while, Felicity was actually Patricia's friend. or supposed friend. And to make matters worse, I think this is just a sly thing to do, is that the way the BFG speaks is based on Patricia O'Neill recovering from a stroke. Like, I don't know how to put that. Like, that is somehow petty and vindictive in a way that just irks me. I am irked. Well and truly irked. So, when Dahl's daughter is 15, like, she finds out about the affair. And Dahl basically sits her down and tells her that, well, she can, destroy her mother who had strokes, her mother who barely survived. You can destroy her life and ruin her marriage and ruin this family. Or you can keep your mouth shut. Like, what horrible arsehole emotionally blackmails his child into covering up for his horrific acts? Like, who does that? Like, I'm sorry, but that's reprehensible. It's fucking bollocks. But anyway, surprise, surprise, the truth will out. It always does. And Patricia and Roald Dahl end up divorcing. In 1983, they get divorced, and then Dahl marries Felicity. Like, the same year. Just out with the old, in with the new. So, like, after he's married to Felicity and, like, she moves into his house and Patricia's kicked out, he ends up being offered an OBE, right? And he denies it. He doesn't want it. Not for any other reason than he wants a knighthood. Like, he wants to be knighted so that he can be, Sir, and she can be, Lady Dahl. Like, okay. Punching up a wee bit, mate. Just a wee bit. And Dahl, being the man he is, cannot stop being controversial. So he ends up making this very anti-Israel statement, and it's, how do I put it? It's very strange though, because like his editor was Jewish, his publisher was Jewish. I'm fairly certain like he just had lots of Jewish people like within his business circle, and he was saying this very sort of anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, like they're interlinked and interwoven. I don't think there's any way to separate them when it comes to Dahl. But he says these things, and is it because he's drunk and wants to cause a scene? Or is it because this is what he really believes? Like, it doesn't matter either way because it's still an absolutely shitty thing to do. But he basically says these really anti-Israel statements. Like, especially at the time. Like, it was just... Meanwhile, he's still writing. He's really mad that he's known for being a children's author, even though that's like the majority of his appeal. But he writes like stuff for TV, actually. He does Tales of the Unexpected, which is, listen, fab. Absolutely fab. I love Tales of the Unexpected, but I like old things. That's why I like history and my romantic partner. So if you're listening to this, hey honey, you're older than me, get over it. Anyway, so there's like I always forget that Roald Dahl wrote the screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Like, I always remember Ian Fleming as part of it because it's like the guy who wrote James Bond. It's wild. But he writes like so many things. Like, what have I got now? Oh yeah, the screenplay for You Only Live Twice, the James Bond movie. He wrote the screenplay because of course he did. And so like Jack and Ori and The Book Tower. I think a few of his stories ended up in Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Just lots and lots of stuff. Well, they do say that what doesn't kill you gives you trauma. and trauma gives you inspiration to be either funny or talented. I'm not sure I'm either of those. But yeah, he ends up, well, living this very long life. Has a rather unpleasant end. Roald Dahl ends up suffering from this very rare cancer. It's myelodysplastic syndrome. That took me 3 attempts to try and say it even that poorly. So it's this very rare blood cancer, and it's actually relatively swift because it's the type of cancer it is. And at the age of 74 years old, Roald Dahl passes away on the 23rd of November 1990. And when he's buried, like when his family lay him to the ground, he is buried with just things in life that are important to him, or were important to him. It's sort of like a Viking funeral, is what they said. I think Sophie Dahl said. So there's like wine and chocolate and a pool cue or a snooker cube. Are they the same cue? I mean, a power saw as well. I don't know the relevance of the power saw, but yeah. And he is buried in the Church of St. Peter and Paul in Buckinghamshire. And like even to this day, people leave things on his grave. So they would be like flowers and toys and all that kind of stuff. Just because, yeah, he inspired worlds. He created worlds that I think in a way prepared children for the harshness that's out there. Like my kids struggled initially with Roald Dahl books. I think you need to be a certain age to start reading them and listening to them, because there's so many cruel characters and there's just abuse in them. There's like lots of abuse, and it can very easily affect like small children especially. So when I started reading to them, I kind of had to wait till they were older because they just didn't like the way people were being mistreated in the books. And that was them. They were like, I don't like this. And I was like, okay, because like I was desperate to read Matilda to them. And now I have them like really into it, and they want to make like Bruce Bogtrotter's like chocolate cake. But Roald Dahl is one of those, I think, you know when they talk about separating art from the artist, you kind of can, but kind of can't, because of like all the trauma that's like built into Roald Dahl's books comes from Roald Dahl. And to completely contradict what I just said, I think it's fine to separate the art from the artist if that artist is dead and can no longer monetize it and can no longer make money or a living from their, you know, horrible viewpoints and terrible things they did. And Roald Dahl has been dead for well over 5 years, so I am more than happy to continue reading his stories. But it does mean you have to bring in a lot of explanations to your children, and that's on you as a parent if you're reading it. If you're not a parent, not really relevant. I don't know, maybe you read it to yourself. Maybe you read it to your pet iguana. Maybe your iguana really likes children's stories. I'm not here to judge an iguana. They do their own thing. But yes, that is the story of Roald Dahl, beloved children's author, and the man whose portrait hangs in the gallery of All Your Faves Are Problematic. But yeah, that is this week's tale. Now, if you liked my retelling, feel free to rate and review 5 stars, especially considering the fact that I'm actually having much trouble speaking. My tongue and my jaw are so sore. And also, if you'd like to vote for me in the Irish Podcast Awards Listener's Choice, you just click on the link down below, look up Who Did What Now, click on my logo, put in your email, and then like respond to that email with a wee clicky button, just to make sure it's more to make sure people aren't like multi-voting and things. So if you would like to do that, that would be totally amazing, because I would like to just annoy the hell out of like the sun by like doing well in it. And I am going to go for recommendation time. For listening, I am going to suggest the Busted Greatest Hits album on Spotify. All of the feminism left my body listening to Busted, because it's not. Some of the lyrics are downright dodgy, but I do like all the swears are in there now, so I'm quite happy. And just the music's so good. And also, there's a sort of a guest version where Bowling for Soup saying she wants to be me with them. It's so good. It's so perfect. It's perfect. I love it so much. And not just because I love Bowling for Soup. Also, for Soup, on behalf of Soup, or to gain Soup. That's not the point. That's a moot point. For watching Wilderness. Watch Wilderness on Prime. Just to love you. Oh, yes. Watch it. And for reading, I'm going to go with a wee whodunit. Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club. Okay, now that that's sorted, I am going to wish you good night. Adios, au revoir, au revoir, my friends. Bye-bye.